frustrating for me, and I want to take the word back. It almost feels to me like it's like has clown been so vacant that you can use this word willy nilly without anyone really saying anything? That's part of the reason why we did this documentary at the beginning was I don't know if you remember in Vegas, but it was happening. It was like in 2016, there was all these news reports of scary clowns are coming to Southern California. And I remember seeing all this stuff and thinking like any kid with like extra allowance would now go get this mask or whatever and be a scary clown at a park. And it made me really kind of angry that like news organizations would use this as kind of a cudgel to drum up sort of like irritation, whatever else. And it was like for kids that aren't clowns, they have a latex mask, and it felt very like, you know, like we were disposable. And I guess, and that's kind of what started my sort of the anger with like kind of getting into this. Like, wait a second. And these same news organizations, they would call me because my name is easily Googleable, or, Los Angeles Clown Company. And they would say like, hey, would you come up and talk about this, how these scary clowns are taking your jobs? And I remember at the time I was like, okay, so you want me to come up in costume, right? And like, oh yeah, in costume for sure. Like, okay, in costume and tell you everybody cry, will you cry? And about how these things are taking after you've created this story that now affects my livelihood. And the whole thing is not paid. Am I correct? And that we can't pay. It's like, okay, yeah, no, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no on that. I was so confused by it. And one more finer point that I thought, and I didn't explain this to them, but you using those words and using that vernacular and saying those are clowns, it really I I understand that this is entertainment. This is not news. This is entertainment. Because if this were flipped and this said like, hey, a cop is pulling people over in Glendale, but it was actually a guy dressed like a cop pulling people over in Glendale, you would say a guy dressed like a cop is pulling people over in Glendale. You wouldn't say a cop is pulling people over in Glendale because that gives a misrepresentation. People think like, oh, gee, cops are going wild. So I think words matter. Words matter. And we need to be accountable for those words. And we live in a society right now where words don't have a lot of weight, and people can say whatever they want. And I think that's dangerous. And I think, and not only can they say whatever they want, but they can continue to lie, and we give them more of a platform. And we need to look at that. Like, why are we doing that? And we're trying to silence the truth tellers. We're trying to elevate the liars and silence the truth tellers. I think we should look at that.